Are you on?
I think we're on. We'll give folks a few minutes to hop on here, but thank you for tuning in this evening. Mom and I are going to be making some of our homemade pizzelles. Even though it's not Christmas time, it is still pizzelle time.
It's Easter.
It's Easter.
Have a mid-Easter
So we'll
time.
be just in a little bit here making some of our homemade pizzelles. We'll give folks a few minutes to hop on here and to join us, but we appreciate you tuning in. Liberty is definitely, I think she wants a carrot.
I can't pick you up right now.
You want to give her a carrot maybe? Liberty is definitely in rare form.
She's going to want more than one carrot.
Yeah, she wants some attention for sure. But we'll give folks a few minutes here to hop on. We'll be making some of our homemade pizzelle recipe this evening, and I'll be discussing some of the bills and pieces of legislation that I've introduced and that I'm kind of pushing and supporting in the legislature this year. It's already been a very busy time, but we appreciate taking a few minutes. I'll also be posting the recipe for our homemade pizzelles this evening, and you also have the link of some of the legislation, and then we'll show you how to kind of find that too. But we'll be going over both of those. So thank you for tuning in. And even though pizzelles are usually, I was just on a Zoom with some of my colleagues, and they said, "Oh, we're so excited to have pizzelles for me to be bringing them down to the State House." But pizzelles are usually kind of like a Christmas type, enjoyment and dessert and things like that. But I think even for Easter, right, we can have them and enjoy them. Any time of
year. With coffee, they're the best.
With coffee, they're the best.
But today we're making vanilla flavored.
Yes.
He took a survey and sounds like vanilla.
Took a survey, and for sure not almond. Even though
almond's my favorite.
I know, even though that was kind of the favorite of some of the folks, my fellow Ashtabula County rep cannot have nuts, I guess.
Oh,
okay. No almond then, because we don't want to make her feel left out.
Yes, but, definitely not.
But we definitely appreciate you tuning in. We'll go ahead and let's get started. I'm kind of sharing this around, and folks are also tuning in. Liberty is going to be jumping up here. Thankfully, Liberty needed to lose some weight.
Oh, but I don't think she has.
She has not, because
she is heavy.
Because someone is always feeding her.
Well, carrots are a good treat.
I switched her to carrots a little bit ago, and I think that has definitely been to the benefit of her waistline, I think. We'll share the recipe of the pizzelles here shortly as well after the video, but I'll share the link of the legislation that I've been co-sponsoring them on. So, Mom, pizzelles, usually an Italian Christmas thing. Also, though, for Easter time, perfect time before. What do you need for pizzelles?
So pizzelles, we're going to double the recipe, because with this recipe, you typically get 30, but we'll get about 60.
Wow.
Pretty much the staple.
So stop by my office this week.
It's pretty much a staple. I mean, flour, sugar, eggs, baking powder, vanilla. Today, not almond or not.
But you can do the anise, you can do chocolate, you can do a whole variety of different flavors.
This is an expensive recipe right now.
I appreciate it, yes.
But these are Grandma and Grandpa's eggs, so they're free.
Farm fresh eggs.
Farm fresh, yeah.
So it looks like 6 eggs?
6 eggs. But these will make them really golden, more so because of the farm eggs.
Nice.
And then you mix the sugar with the eggs, you beat that up.
Lots of sugar, lots of eggs, a big thing of flour. And as she's kind of putting those in and beating up the eggs and the sugar there. So we've been very busy at the legislature. It's crazy. It's already March.
I know.
I'm still smiling, still having fun.
I hope so.
Not sleeping, but still having fun.
I was going to say, you look tired. I saw a picture recently. I'm like, that was before he was state rep.
Yes.
You didn't look so tired.
But really enjoying it. This Wednesday actually is the State of the State with the governor.
Oh, Wednesday.
So it shows that we're already really kind of kicking in. That first month in January is really a month where we're organizing, we're getting things ready, we're doing rules. So really January, we didn't do too much. February was kind of the first month where things started to be introduced and stuff started to be shared. And then now here in March, we're really passing things, moving things through committee. Every bill that's introduced has to go through 3 hearings, essentially. It's introduced, and then it has to go to a committee. And that committee has a first hearing where it's heard by the sponsors. And then the second committee hearing is where it's heard by the people supporting it. And then third one, it's heard by the people who are opposing it. So at the very least, there are 3 committee hearings. And that will take at the very least then a month just to get through that first committee process. Wow. Because it's once a week. So this is the butter now too?
The butter, melted butter, and you got to wait till
That's a lot of butter as well.
It is a lot of, 2 sticks. So if you go onto the legislature site and you click it to follow when something...
So on the link here in the video on the Facebook page, I have a link. It's just, if you search ohiohouse.gov, you can actually see the legislative search, and you can search for any bills, and you can actually track a bill where you get an email, and that will be emailed to you when you want to be essentially notified. So that could be when it moves through the committee process, when it has a hearing, when it goes and it's voted out of committee. So any updates on the bill. So that's really helpful, I think. Yeah. And folks can use that as well. But so it takes at least 3 weeks just to get through the committee process. Then there might be amendments, for example. Is it the vanilla flavoring?
Vanilla.
Okay. Yeah. So a little bit of vanilla flavoring in these ones, because these are going to be vanilla pizzelles as opposed to chocolate or almond ones. Still stirring them all around. We're warming up the pizzelle waffle maker as well.
Be careful, that's hot.
And these are pretty simple things.
Very
simple.
Not,
they're not super expensive or anything crazy. So at least takes a month. And then if there's amendments, let's say there needs to be changes, that will take longer as well. But once it gets through the committee process, and that's really where it's vetted, where committee members ask questions. Ways and Means Committee for me and the Energy Committee have been the most active committees. I remember the Energy, Ways and Means, Arts, Athletics, and Tourism, and the Pension and Public Insurance Committee. So I typically will share out kind of like links. You can watch things live. Mom usually will text me and say that she's watching some of the ones if they're related to work stuff. So that's really where we vet things, where
listening,
we look.
Listening, not watching.
Yes, listening, watching. And we ask questions and try to dive into more of that policy side. But it's been a pretty busy, especially, most folks don't quite realize, a lot of people have asked, especially on the property tax side, why wasn't anything done last year? Why wasn't more done last year? Lots of issues last year, don't want to get into those. All of that's just to say that this year we have been very busy and active already, passing a number of bills out of the House already. And you can see those on my list that I posted in the on the page, on my Facebook page. And you've probably seen them on just social media and emails as well as we've been going through. So you just essentially kind of stirred it all up.
Yep, it's just make sure it's all combined. I'm going to scrape down the side and then mix it some more. But I put the baking powder in with the flour.
Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Baking powder, flour, sugar, eggs, vanilla. Did I miss anything? No, I don't think so. No. Yeah, so all pretty straightforward things that you probably have maybe lying around your kitchen or something like that. Stirring them all together, making the batter. And it makes quite a good number of pizzelles, which is nice too. And these things last. They last.
Sure. You can freeze them. Yeah.
Yep, they last a long time. So as we're still stirring those up, I've actually I've had 2 bills pass out of the House. If you watched our sportsman bill this past week that passed out of the House, a friend of mine, Representative Jamie Callender out of Lake County, folks were kind of all looking around because no one knows if this has happened recently or at all. I gave my kind of introductory speech to the bill, and then my joint sponsor, Representative Kelly Dieter out of Huron County, gave her introductory speech. We both sat down, and then Representative Callender stood up, and he said, "Mr. Speaker, a question for the sponsor."
Aww.
And that's very unusual. I've never seen it. And everyone's kind of looking around, and I smile at him, and he says, to one or both of you, is this your first bill? And everyone kind of smiled, and because no one quite knows. Jamie's great. No one knows what he's ever going to say, though. And so I stood up, and I looked at the speaker and just asked, do I answer? And he said, yeah, go ahead. And I smiled, and I said, well, Representative Callender, technically this is my second bill. And everyone got a big laugh, and it was a funny time. So been very fortunate. My first bill that was passed out of the House was mainly Representative Fowler Arthur's bill, Sarah's bill, for the Ashtabula area city schools and that emergency that happened there with the snowstorm. So now you've combined all the dough, and now we're just putting it into.
I'm going to put in the clear dish.
So now you can see it makes a lot of dough. A lot of dough. So that was House Bill 43, and that bill waived the minimum hours requirements for Lakeside because of the huge snow emergency, the 6 feet of snow on the roof, the collapsing of the roof, the governor declaring a state of emergency, tons of issues that happened, and they were not going to be able to graduate on time or actually with the minimum hours because of a whole host of things. They had to move all the students. I drove by there and went to a meeting there with their superintendent recently, and there's no roof on the buildings. Like it is, and one of the big issues why they couldn't go virtual for a decent chunk, the servers where all the computers were actually right where the roof collapsed. So like just perfect storm, no pun intended. And that is why we could push and advocate for them to have their hours waived. So that was the first bill that was passed about 2 weeks ago or so, if I remember correctly, out of the House. And that's moving over to the Senate. Sarah and I will be giving sponsor testimony over in the Senate, I actually believe this week, on that bill, because once it passes the House, then it has to go to the Senate, go through that committee process, exact same thing, where you have to have 3 hearings on that bill. So now that we've put the dough out, you've got the waffle maker.
Yep, it's already hot.
There's nice patterns. You've probably seen Pizzelles with those fun kind of patterns.
You can get your name or whatever.
No, I didn't know that.
You want. Yeah, you have
That's fun.
Special order it.
That's not a bad idea, actually.
No, but so I use the cookie scoop.
Just a small scoop.
Small scoop, and just put 1 dab on the right side and 1 dab on the left side. Now, here's the thing. Normally, I have my cell phone here, and I time it for like 15 seconds.
So very short.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't do that. So maybe
it's kind of like a waffle maker.
Yeah.
But a very short kind of time
good.
Just to kind of bake them.
And the first couple ones don't look as good.
These were always, as kids, the rejects that we would eat right away. I remember. So they're not very firm. They look pretty light. So then the second bill that passed out of the House was the Senior Fair Sportsman Bill. This is House Bill 64. I joke with someone, I wish it was 65 because that would have been ironic.
Oh, yeah.
But this is the bill where I got contacted on my very first day in office by Gary, who could not be watching tonight. He's been messaging me almost every day since he messaged me on my first day in office about this idea. He just turned 65. He thought that senior licenses for hunting and fishing would qualify you at 65. And then when you went and tried to get it, it actually turns out it's 66. And he said, I thought everything was 65. And so we looked in the Ohio Revised Code, and actually he's right. There's 9 age-related savings or abilities to have discounts. And of the 9, 8 of them are all 65 and under. This was the only one that was over 65. Now, it sounds like a pretty small thing, but it meant something to him, obviously. And it meant something to...
She wants to go outside.
I think Liberty really needs to go outside. We might ask Dad to come and let her outside. You're going to really start to hear her pretty soon if Dad does not come out here pretty quickly. So hopefully he is watching right now because we will need him. But
you won't go outside.
That bill then saves seniors a year earlier. And actually another member, Bill Romer, who's a CPA, he's the chair of Ways and Means. He said, David, I almost did this myself too, because he was calculating out you can do 3-year licenses, you can do a lifetime license, senior side. And he joked that he would have lost out on a year because of he thought it was 65 and he did he did it backwards for 10 years of how best to do his hunting and fishing license. So it is a savings of about $10 for the hunting and the fishing license. For the lifetime license, it's a larger savings as well. But that was something that is meaningful. It actually, though, to increase the 1 year, it would cost ODNR about $300,000 a year.
Oh my word!
So we always talk about costs and about simple policy things, but that's probably no one knows why it's 66 versus 65. But that cost, because you're increasing it 1 year, you're adding an extra year of savings, about $300,000.
Wow.
So that's why we can't make them free. One,
I was going to say,
because
no wonder.
that money goes to conservation efforts. Actually, sportsman folks were originally opposed to this idea because it would lose money then to ODNR for conservation, for hunting, for fishing areas. But when they found out how small it was, and it just made sense. But we also receive actually federal dollars for every license that we sell. And so we want to make sure that we sell licenses, we don't give them away. We had a question, feel free to chat in questions too. What is the brand of the Pitzell maker? As you're kind of
It's a Villaware?
Villaware. Villaware. Very simple one. I know that there's lots of different varieties. And
Palmer, I think, is the best.
Palmer brand. So look up Palmer brand as well. Villaware. It's kind of just like your breakfast waffle, and you can see you just keep rolling through these, and it's pretty easy. So some of the other bills that I have introduced and have been working on as well. House Bill 22. This is one with Representative Brian Lorenz out of Delaware County. We've already had our sponsor testimony and our proponent, or those that support it, that hearing, and now we just have our opponent, which is this Wednesday hearing. This bill actually passed the House last year, did not get over to the Senate in time, but this one would essentially add a new exemption for spouses of, it's the Gold Star family homestead exemption, essentially. For those that have lost their loved ones in military combat, this would be a new, essentially, tax credit to them until they were to remarry. So it's kind of it's a very meaningful one. It's straightforward. It's a very low cost to the state. And remember, with homestead, the state of Ohio actually reimburses the local governments for the credit, keeps them whole. That's over a $2 billion check that our state sales tax and income tax spends to subsidize and give credits to local governments for the homestead credit, for the owner occupancy credit, and for the non-business credit that you'll see on your bill too. So that's House Bill 22. I would foresee that one to be passing here pretty shortly out of the House, and I think it'll get fast action as well in the Senate. But opponent testimony is this Wednesday for that one. I already talked about House Bill 43, which was Sarah Mai's bill on Lakeside. House Bill 61. This is my and Representative Jack Daniels, my mom's favorite state rep.
One of my favorites. There's a couple. I don't know.
And Representative Daniels just liked the video, so he might be watching right now. But this
Make sure he gets somebody.
Yes. Well, he's very close to me on the hallway, so he'll be probably stopping by. But this is our overhaul of Homestead. Remember, the Homestead program is for those over 65 who make less than about $38,000 a year. There's a credit right now of about $26,000 of value that gets applied to their property value. You decrease the value for tax purposes. That program right now costs nearly $500 million. Wow. And that just shows you how many people are on it and how expensive taxes have gotten, property taxes have gotten. So the state cuts a check to local governments for that amount. What the problem is one, it's small. So the average property owner saves maybe $450 or so on that. It's a small amount. And actually, it's been, even though last year was the first year where that tax credit was increased, the exemption value was increased for the first time since 2007, you actually lose savings on homestead every year because, remember, as values go up, tax rates go down. So we're technically taxing you at a lower rate, but that value exemption is only increasing slightly. So essentially, slightly higher value that we're exempting, much higher value overall, which means a much lower tax rate, which means you're actually year over year losing savings. And we don't want that to happen either. So our bill, House Bill 61, would essentially change that to a flat amount. If we were to have kept up with inflation, that should be right about $750 for traditional homestead people, about $1,500 for our veteran homestead program. And then we also, in the bill, we looked at the owner occupancy credit, which is for folks who own their home and live in it. The bill moves that dollar number to $750 as well. The problem with that is the cost. For every $25 we increase the owner occupancy credit, the cost for our state tax dollars is $100 million. So that just shows you how many folks. We have about 4 million people that are on the owner occupancy credit across the state. And I don't envision this bill itself. It showed essentially how much we have not been paying to our property owners in terms of credits, because a lot of these things had stopped being fully reimbursed or fully given to property owners back in 2013. And so we kind of made it as current to see, okay, if we had continued, how much would we be spending? And it'd be a lot more. So we are going to be asking for this bill to essentially be put into the budget because this is a big priority. It's one of our kind of 3 areas of focus when it comes to property tax reform, and it's going to have a big price tag. So we're essentially going to be asking for about $160 million more in the operating budget, which is happening right now too, for the homestead program. And we're going to incorporate House Bill 61, which Representative Daniels and I are on, and House Bill 40, which Tracy Richardson and Mike Davila are on for our veteran population. And that's going to be one of the first things that we do on the property tax side, almost doubling the homestead credit, making sure that people are not losing credit every year, that they're able to gain credit because it'll be tied to inflation, which will be important. But that is still a large price tag. Homestead is not automatically applied. You have to apply for it once you hit 65. So definitely have her reach out to her county. In Summit County, it's her fiscal officer. See if she is on the program. And my guess is she is, if she's 86, but definitely have her apply. And that will save her right now about $450 on average dollars a year. Our bill would move that up to $750 a year and then tie that to inflation moving forward. So that's House Bill 61. One of the more controversial things with that bill, though, right now, our state sales tax and income tax dollars reimburse local entities 100%. So that $450, if Victoria's mom, Vicky's mom, gets on the program, then the state writes a check to Summit County for $450 and makes them whole. We're saying it's getting super expensive, and there's no real accountability aspect. Because local entities are reimbursed at 100%. And so we're essentially saying we're going to reimburse you at 95%. That gets us an extra $20 million being able to give in credits for homestead. And we'll see where the budget actually ends up. But that's House Bill 61 that myself and Representative Daniels are on, and that we're pushing also. So you can just keep stacking these up as you
stacking them
as you make them.
And then once they're all done, I put them in the oven on like the lowest temperature on 170 for about an hour. Turn the oven off.
An hour.
Yeah, and then leave them in overnight. And
you could eat them now.
You could, but
they're
will
a
really
little flimsy,
crisp them up.
But
yeah, these ones here probably
these ones
more.
are a little harder, and you've definitely seen these. Very easy, as you can see, to make. Very tasty.
Putting them in the oven really crisps them.
Yep. Next bill, House Bill. We already talked about 64, which is the senior license bill. House Bill 123. This one's a pretty straightforward one that says if an elected office holder in Ashtabula County, the example happened in 2020 with the treasurer's office. Incumbent treasurer, Democrat, lost. She then, in February, resigned her position. Currently, the incumbent's party has the full ability and authority to appoint for the remainder of the term. So for February through, in the case of the treasurer, it's September. They do not have to appoint the winner of the election, which in our case was a Republican in the November election. They can appoint really whoever they want. There's been lots of issues across the state when this happens because you have an interim person. There's, the voters just spoke on someone different. That person usually applies, but they're not selected. And so this bill is with Representative Mark Johnson out of the Ross County area, Southern Ohio. He had this happen as well with his county treasurer's office.
And they don't start till March or till September.
Auditors don't start till March. Treasurers don't start till September, correct. So what our bill would say is essentially, if you won the election in November and your incumbent that you beat resigns early from the term, you get first dibs on the position. So you can decide, do you want it now? Now, in our case, if I remember correctly, our county treasurer that's currently in office did apply for the position, but it was a bad time and she may not have wanted to. So she didn't have to. She under our bill, she doesn't have to. But it makes sense that the incumbent who loses would then have their position filled by the person that just won the election if they would like. So that's House Bill 123, which I think makes a lot of sense. House Bill 124. So I'm on, 4, 8, 9 bills, which is a lot that I'm introducing. And then there's a lot more coming as well. But House Bill 124 I introduced this one right after the last one, if you couldn't tell.
Track of them
Well, I've got this on our website, but I do have some lists as well. So 124 is called Flip the Switch. I'm sorry, Flip the Script. And what this bill does is it relates to property taxes. And it says that essentially right now, the Department of Taxation is the final say, the final arbiter of what sales are valid and what sales are not valid when we're talking about the valuation process. And we're talking about revaluations with county markets and the real estate prices that are moving when we talk about property taxes. And this bill would say that it should actually be the county auditor who gets to determine what sales are valid and what sales are not valid. Perfect example would be for those here in Ashtabula, think about Geneva on the Lake. A lot of cottages that are at $40,000 in value. Person goes in, renovates that cottage, sells it for $200,000. That sale should not be considered a valid sale that moves the values of the property, 400% in that neighborhood. Because essentially that home is a brand new home, was renovated, was fixed up. Essentially, the $40,000 in value that the auditor's office did have is not the correct base value to use in relation to the $200,000 sale price. That's a little bit confusing, but what it ultimately says is that the local official, the auditor, knows best what's happening in their neighborhoods, what's happening with their real estate market, and it should be the county's position to determine valid sales. This will make, I always said as auditor, this makes data better. And the better your data,
it makes sense. The
better your results. Now, could this result with allowing the auditor who knows best what's happening in their market for higher property values? That's always possible. Typically, though, you get instances where maybe sales aren't arm's length, where there's two different names that, Bob A sells to Bob B. The Department of Taxation would never know that Bob A and Bob B are actually brothers because they have different last names, but small town and counties that are small, they know that Bob A and Bob B are related. So that should not be a valid sale. So that type of information, that's what House Bill 124, have that bill along with Representative Thomas Hall out of Southwest Ohio. We introduced that bill here recently, and I'm really excited and happy for that one. Another one is House Bill 129. This one is another very difficult bill, a very controversial bill. So remember property taxes, again. Remember with the 20 mil floor. The 20 mil floor is that guaranteed tax rate that schools are able to assess onto all their properties. 20 mils is $20 per $1,000 of value, or 2% of the value. That's the tax rate that schools are essentially guaranteed to have. Now, if you don't pass levies, as your values go up, remember the tax rates go down. When tax rates go below those 20 mils, that guaranteed tax rate amount to schools, the auditor's office has to apply the difference. Let's say a school goes down to 13 mils that the voters have approved. Well, the auditor still has to assess and charge 20 mils because that's the guaranteed tax rate. So that's been the reason and one of the big causes of our spikes in property taxes, mainly in rural areas. Of the about 614 or so school districts, roughly 400 of them are below 20 mils of guaranteed tax rate. After this year, we're anticipating more than 500. So almost every school in the state. And so what House Bill 129 would say is that that guaranteed tax rate amount should be a true guaranteed tax rate amount. Some of the levies that we vote on do not actually count towards the guaranteed tax rate that schools are receiving. So if you have passed an emergency levy, that levy goes to local schools, is approved by the voters, but it says that that revenue coming in does not count towards their guaranteed tax rate amount of 20 mils. So in one example, you might have a school of 13 mils that's been voted. There's the 20 mil guaranteed tax rate, so the auditor has to apply 20 mils to all the property, but they've also passed a 5 mil emergency levy. So the auditor also assesses that 5 mils onto the property owners as well. And so what you're getting then is when really their tax rate should be 18 mils of tax rate, they're actually being applied 25 mils of tax rate. And that is a struggle because there are some schools that have passed emergency levies and renewed them for several decades and have relied on emergency levies to fund their schools. But it's not truth in taxation. And so that's House Bill 129. I myself am on that one. That has not had a hearing yet on the Ways and Means side in the House. It has had a hearing in the Senate. Senator O'Brien is carrying a similar bill to that one. Currently, we also have income tax levies, and we also prevent schools can right now with their unvoted tax rate that's separate from the 20 mil floor, their inside millage, that 10 mils that's on every single property. Schools can actually allocate that towards permanent improvement purposes. And when they do that, that actually also takes it away from the calculation of that guaranteed tax rate, which is misleading, frankly, for the taxpayers. So we prevent that as well. That one, I would envision seeing some action on that in the House with a hearing here pretty shortly. The Ways and Means Committee has been busy hearing the governor's tax proposals and the budget. And so we've not been able to move some bills as fast as we would like through the committee. But now that that is done, we, I think, are going to be moving some bills here and having hearings. I think we're having 4 different bills being heard this Wednesday through Committee 2. So you can see how many of these are already made. You said 60?
I feel like that's about how many different bills. No,
well, no, we're already, the House is already up to almost 200 bills that have been introduced.
Wow.
So there's a good number that are introduced. Now, how many of those actually pass? What does that look like? You know, it's a little bit more difficult to say, but there will be a good number of different pieces of legislation that are definitely introduced and kind of discussed through the process. So we could have a pit sell for every bill, maybe. Another bill that we just introduced recently is House Bill 154. This one I'm on with Representative Glassburn out of the Cleveland area. And what this one says, so think of property tax abatements. Think of a new development coming in and that development receiving 100% abatement for between 7 and 15 years. Now, this helps to spur that development. We need more housing. We need more growth and activity happening in our residential market. So we need these things. And without the abatements, you know, we may not have as many homes being built. So they're important. However, what happens when you have 100% residential abatement, new development, think of the families coming in, think of the extra costs that development has on the local governments. That will usually make our tax rates increase. It makes the costs increase, and the other property owners in that development, not in the development, but around the development in the district, are then shouldering the burden. And this is not helpful when it comes to the property tax conversation. And so what our bill says is essentially we still need to have these abatements, but we copy what's called a TIF, or tax incremental financing, where there is language that keeps the school district receiving the tax amount that they would be receiving if the abatement was not there. So the property owners will still be paying taxes then. They'll be paying them to the school district. That's where the biggest expense is. That's where the biggest kind of burden sharing is, and where tax rates will increase. And this way, folks that are voting on levies are able to then actually be paying taxes and contributing, and that does not increase the rest of our tax burden for the people that are not in that district. So that will be one that's a little bit different too, in terms of kind of talking through the process. But none of these, especially on the property tax side, are silver bullets by any means. But when you put everything together, they make a big impact. And that is one, the residential CRA reform bill, where maybe in Ashtabula and Trumbull, residential CRAs are not very common, but in more suburban areas, more urban areas, they're very common. And they cause, frankly, the tax rates and the burden to be shifted to those that are not in the development. So that will make an impact then for the people that live around those areas too. Last bill that has been formally introduced, I'll talk about real quick, and then some other ideas as we're almost out.
Almost done.
These are a lot of pit sells. Good thing I have 98 colleagues in the House.
But there's only 60 of them.
Well,
possibly, maybe a little more.
Let's just say that many people don't visit me. So, but maybe more people will now that they have desserts. Is House Bill 158. This bill is with Representative Brennan, also out of Cuyahoga area. And this one is more on the energy front. It essentially says that, hey, your not tax bill, but your utility bill that you receive, that bill should be as transparent as possible and list out all the different fees and charges and explain things better. So to me, this just is more of that transparency aspect when it comes to especially utilities and energy costs, which we know are a big issue as well. So those are the 9 that I have introduced so far formally. In terms of co-sponsor bills, there's a ton. So you have the option to introduce a bill. That's you drafting the bill. That's you actually formally introducing the bill, saying your name's on this, you control the bill. But when you do that, you can ask others to join you in co-sponsoring. So as a co-sponsor, you don't have control over the bill. You're just essentially saying, hey, I endorse this idea. I trust the sponsor of the bill to do the idea right. And I want to say that I will support and vote for this idea. So I've co-sponsored. Levi, my aide, has told me I need to get more selective. But I've co-sponsored a good number of different bills. You can see them on the list there of all the different legislation that has been co-sponsored. But a lot of good bills have been introduced. I typically have co-sponsored things that are more fiscal focused. There's a handful of other property tax bills that are in the House that I've supported that will be getting traction. Like, for example, this week, House Bill 28, which would remove the ability for local governments to have replacement levies. That is one, I co-sponsored very quickly and is one on the property tax side that just makes sense and we'll be pushing as kind of part of our overall reform efforts. But there's a good number of co-sponsored bills on that page 2 that you can kind of see. I also share one co-sponsored bill a week typically on my social media pages just so that folks can see what are some of the ideas out there, what's happening in terms of legislation. Lots of different pieces there on my kind of official website where you can see the bills, read them, see summaries of them.
And then track them.
And track them if you'd like, as Mom does. So those are the formally kind of introduced ones, the formally co-sponsored ones. And then we have a good number of other bills that are coming out here pretty soon, especially on the property tax side. Things like budget commission reform, giving the budget commission, which is that local board of the auditor, treasurer, and currently the prosecutor, a lot of authority and ability to oversee budgets and to keep local governments in check. That commission needs a lot of work, and this bill is going to be big. This is probably one of the biggest ones, but that will be introduced here very shortly once we have the language back. We're also looking at other kind of 20 mil floor reforms too, things like tying and capping the 20 mil floor growth to inflation. That way we're not having these huge spikes in revenue to schools that are unvoted. To things like CAUV and uniformity in CAUV, having more of a kind of clear understanding of what farmers are able to get credits for and how we are applying those credits. I think that's really important across the state too. But more bills as well coming out here shortly. Right now, the budget is taking up a lot of the time. Yeah. There's it's a big bill, a big undertaking. And a lot of good folks are looking at that budget and are trimming and are cutting and are trying to make sure that we have as efficient of a state government as possible. And there's a lot of budget requests and a lot of funding and financials in that bill that are going to be changed, which is good.
And that's in June?
So we passed at the House, we have to pass that by the first week of April. And then it goes over to the Senate. It has to be passed, though, as a body and signed by the governor by the end of June. Okay. Yes. So Mom has baked all the pizzelles. You can see there's a good number of them, about 60 or so. Took very little time, 25 minutes or so, to be able to actually make them. Yeah, and to have them all ready. And then you said you put them in the oven?
So then I put them in the oven. Instead of stacking them all up real high, you just put like 6 of them or so.
And this is to firm them up because you want them to be...
Yeah, they'll get real crispy.
Yep, crispy.
On the lowest temperature for 1 hour. And then just leave them in the oven overnight.
And then that really kind of makes them firm. It makes them good for like dipping in coffee, for example. You can I've seen people put like powdered sugar on them and different things. I just like them very plain. How long can you keep these for?
Oh gosh, I don't think they'll spoil at all.
Yeah.
No. They'll just keep getting crispier.
We will experiment and see how long they last. So really good cookies. You can make a lot of different flavors. We just made the vanilla flavor, and I'll share the recipe on the Facebook page and post for that recipe. But very easy to do, great to share. These will be in my office if you'd like to stop by in Columbus this week. It sounds like they'll be staying here overnight at my parents' house, and I'll be picking them up tomorrow.
Yeah.
That sounds good to me. And hope you enjoyed kind of learning about pizzelles and watching us make those, and got a quick update on some of the bills that we're working on. A lot more coming here shortly on the property tax front, especially. You will see likely between 10 to 15 single issue targeted bills that hit all different areas of the tax system. A lot of good reform ideas being discussed. We're actually acting, it may seem like we're going slow, but we're actually acting very fast on these, and we'll be moving through the House here shortly, which is exciting. But hope you enjoyed. Thank you for the questions. And we don't deliver them. Sorry. Hi, Representative Pizzoli. Representative Pizzoli also had a bill passed this past week, Roy Rogers Day. So I did not know who that was. Until he educated us, and I was a proud yes vote then once I was educated on who that was. And then Trustee Santos out of Mahoning will be here in Columbus this week, so you can stop by. And I know, Sharon, I did not know who Roy Rogers was, but stop by. And he testified. Like I mentioned, our Ways and Means Committee is hearing a lot of the governor's budget in terms of tax policy. So the governor proposed 3 new taxes in the budget, a whole bunch more taxes, but the big ones were new taxes on marijuana, on sports betting, and on tobacco. And we've been hearing a lot of testimony from all different folks on those 3 tax increases, and that's been taking up a lot of our time in committee over the past couple of weeks. So Trustee Santos was there recently to testify against the marijuana tax change and increase as well. But lots of good conversations in those. I don't think we'll be increasing any taxes on folks with those 3. At least that's what I'm pushing for, no increases. But we'll see where the legislature falls in that. So hopefully educational for you, helpful. Always happy to answer questions, reach out anytime. And thank you so much for tuning in tonight and for watching us make delicious vanilla pizzelles.
Well, thanks for keeping us updated and informed.
Yeah, that's fun.
Learned a lot since you've been in office already.
Still smiling, still going.
Hopefully.
Just slower. Have a good night.
Have a good night.